Welcome back to another episode of Buckle Up with Simon and Brian. Simon, how are you doing?
Brian, we are pre-recording this episode, so at this moment of pre-recording, I'm feeling great. At the moment of this episode being released, I'm probably sleep deprived, extremely tired in the Italian Alps, racing. That's probably going to be the third day that I'm running around, climbing 5, 10,000 all the time, but having the time of my life. And as always, hoping that my knees will support me throughout the whole race. But how about yourself, Brian? How are your knees?
My knees are good. I'm hoping by the time, again, we are pre-recording this, so I'm hoping by the time you're running in the Italian Alps, my knees are still good, and that I'm still on track and training for the Moab 240 for me. Simon, it was really great to see you guys at Leadville. We've mentioned it in the last couple episodes. I did run into a friend while I was there. Her name is Mandy Mullen. We've been friends for just a few years. I think it started on social media. I ran into her at the coaching conference, the USCA coaching conference in Colorado Springs. In a weird twist, she coached my sister-in-law to her first half marathon, and they both, my sister-in-law and Mandy, come from northern Colorado, which is the Windsor, Fort Collins, Greeley type of area. It's about an hour north of Denver, about 45 minutes north of Boulder. Mandy is the owner of Run Windsor, Colorado, and she's doing amazing things up there. She's offering events, different disciplines, bringing in seasoned veterans to run races, as well as bringing in a new community to running and kind of letting them feel their way through it in a local scene there in northern Colorado. Run Windsor has 12 races that they offer throughout the year, different distances, different themes, and they all seem to be super fun and super popular.
Yeah, I didn't know Mandy before the recording. It was great meeting her, great conversation. Really, you can tell very quickly that it's someone who's very driven and a problem solver and a go getter and a community builder. So it was really interesting to discuss about another aspect, which we've touched a little bit when we had the episode with Candice in a different types of event, and that's the parallel I kind of made at some point in the discussion. But organizing race, kind of building a group of people around you and building something that is bigger. So it was really interesting, and quite frankly, she made me discover where Windsor is. So I have Googled it since then, and yes, now I know where it is, which is right outside of Fort Collins. So kudos for that.
Yeah, it's just a few miles east of I-25, directly east of Fort Collins, Colorado. So up there north, pretty close to the Cheyenne, Wyoming border, and it's pretty rural, but it's growing in population. I think she mentioned that it's grown twice the size since she's moved there, just a handful of years ago. I think she moved there in 2017 or so. Um, it's always great to run into her. She is a ball of energy, and I'm sure you get that from this episode just by listening to her talk. She is a ball of energy. She brings everything she has to the table, no matter what it is. This conversation, her race running company, her training for hundreds, her family, and her community. It was really great to catch up with her and hear all about the things that she's doing for her community. Without further ado, here's Mandy Mullen. Enjoy. Welcome to the show, Mandy. How are you doing this evening?
I'm fantastic. How are you guys?
I'm doing pretty dang good. Mandy, you have built a really strong community in Windsor, Colorado. It is north of Denver on I-25. I don't know, about an hour. Is it an hour north?
Yeah,
Yeah, roughly.
depending
It's
on what I
across.
25 feels like. Could be a
It's
4 hour
it's
drive
it's
or a 1
true.
hour
It's,
drive.
it's true. It depends on if it's crazy time I-25 or 2 o'clock in the morning I-25. Probably
Yeah.
neither are great, but either way, it's directly across from Fort Collins, roughly in that neighborhood out there on I-25, east of I-25. It's a small little town. You just gave me some statistics, but I'll let you tell us that. But you're really building like a community and a brand and a culture out there of exercise and fitness. And I wanted to dive into that, but first we always try to back it up a whole bunch and just how did you find yourself running these races? How did you find yourself in sport? Is it something you've always done? Tell us a little bit about your history, your background.
Well, I grew up in northeastern Colorado, so I'm a brush beet digger. Any other Colorado natives might heckle and joke about that. We got that name because the kids actually got out during harvest season to go and dig beets. So, small community just east of Windsor. Went to Colorado State University, hated running, loathed running. My track coach from high school actually will reach out to me periodically and be very frustrated that now I find running 100-mile races to be fun, and he couldn't get me to run a 400-meter dash. So that's kind of fun. I found myself in this community. Honestly, the quick story is that Nick and I got into running when we got engaged to as a means to just lose weight, shut off all of the beer bongs and pizzas that college dealt us, that we just were forced to have, and wanted to get healthier. So stumbled upon running. Nick loved it. I still didn't love it, but was really inspired to be a part of the running community when Nick qualified to run the Boston Marathon. When I was 9 months pregnant with our oldest son, I still was like running is for the birds. We went to Boston. It was 2013, so the year of the Boston Marathon or the Boston bombing.
Mm-hmm.
And, there with my then 9 month old, I just watched the running community come together to fight and celebrate and just uphold each other during that really hard time, and just was really inspired to be a part of it. I really reflected a lot on the hard training not only Nick went through to get to Boston, but all of the other runners there. And I was like, man, this community is pretty cool. I want to be a part of it. And fast forward, decided that I would one day try to qualify for Boston on my own. When we moved from Fort Collins to Windsor in 2017, 2016, there wasn't really a running community here. There were only a couple of 5Ks that the town put on. And so I started up a women's only running group. And like all things would have it, as you're an entrepreneur and you don't realize it at the time, you guys might understand this. You start saying yes to more and more and more. And it's just the snowball effect of a small 25-member women's only run group all of a sudden is a 30-member run group. All of a sudden you're race directing a few 5Ks and then 10Ks, and then you're opening a brick and mortar gym right before COVID, and then you're putting on Windsor's first half marathon, and then keeps on snowballing to where we're at today, where I own Run Colorado Relays with a business partner. I own the Run Windsor Race Series. I have a nonprofit, and we put on 12 endurance events a year, mostly in northern Colorado, as well as 2 cross-state relay races, and have a nonprofit to empower the community's wellness while giving back. So that's the quick and dirty of it all. I really got into it, I guess. The long story short is because I love running. I love the running community. I love the power that I know that it brings to individuals, not just myself, but others. And I just wanted to be a part of it and be a leader in that industry.
That's great. I love that story. It sounds like it was almost the opposite of a little bit of opposite of how I found it. I love running, and I wanted to be part of the community. It sounded like you loved the community, and to be part of the community, you had to run a little bit.
That's interesting. Yes. Yeah, I'm a social butterfly. So yeah, for sure. I was like, this community is cool. I have to run half marathons, full marathons. Okay, I guess I can do that. And then you find like the connecting power, and that's where the magic happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like when you merge those two together, the community and the running part.
Yeah, and what does Run Windsor look like today from 25 women only running group? What is Run Windsor? It's 12 races, you said, a couple cross-state races, and some other things. But what's the community look like? Is it pretty robust? Is it growing?
Yeah, it's growing. So I started it as a run coach. I became a USCA certified run coach and was coaching a group of women to run, whether it was a 5K, half marathon, full marathon, and kind of doing group coaching as well as one-on-one coaching. I've coached your sister-in-law as she ran her first few long distance races. And From there, as we grew to race direct, I kind of peeled off from the coaching part, which is why I'm so happy to know you. And when people ask me to run coach them, I politely say I don't have the capacity for that anymore. So today, the community more looks like we gather together for group runs. A standard group of people are running together Tuesday nights, Thursday nights, on the weekends, and traveling together to run races, supporting one another, whether it's crewing and pacing for the Leadville 100, which we just got done doing last weekend and you guys were there. And then just running the races together. So really today it feels more like a support group of runners and volunteers who show up at all 12 of our races to not only empower one another, but other runners that are newer to the community. So I would say I probably have a solid core of like 10 to 20 people in our group that are both running our races but volunteering for our races and reaching out to people, supporting them in their running journey. A few of them are aspiring coaches as well, so we're looking to build back up the coaching part of Run Windsor, but for right now it's just putting on really incredible community events. I mean, my mission has evolved over the years. I would say when it started, it was just for fun. It was really to support women's running journeys no matter where they were at, and in a fun, easy way that was affordable to all. And today, I would say our mission is more creating a healthier community through endurance events that not only support the running community, but also highlight and build up businesses and local nonprofits and organizations that make Northern Colorado great. And I think that mission and what it looks like today really comes out of me being a COVID business owner baby. I saw what that time did for our community, and it was either it could tear you apart or it could help you bring things together. And our community and the Run Windsor group really banded together during that time to just come out stronger together. And that's part of our mission statement is we are just stronger together. And we're not just here for runners and competitive runners. We are just here for everybody that's looking to just do good.
What are some of the distances that your race series offers from 5K to what? What do the events look like?
Well, the sky's the limit, right? We started with
Mm-hmm.
5K, added on 10Ks, half marathons. In October of 2020, we put on Windsor's first full marathon, or actually first half marathon. My bad. Very controversial because of all of the regulations going on. The following year, we put on our first full marathon. And then last year, we added on our first few ultra events, or 2 years ago. So we have a couple of events that are 12-hour last one standing event, and then a 24-hour relay race or solo loop kind of backyard ultra event in May. So a lot of distances. We've really taken on the festival style and community building events this year and last year, I would say, where we're really making it more than just show up, run a 5K or a half marathon, get your meal and your bib and your medal and your beer and whatever and go home. We really have tried to bring more of the festival experience into it. So this year, especially our longer distance races, like our 12-hour last one standing and our loop backyard ultra relay race in May, they are going to have sauna, cold plunge, live band, music, stretching, massage therapists at the race. So trying to just kind of encompass everything the running community wants. One of the things we always have, which is a non-negotiable, is a kids 1 mile fun run, because let's be honest, that's the most fun race to watch, is a kiddo running 1 mile. So yeah, just a variety of distances, and we try to make each race very unique in the branding and the feel. They all have a different design. They all have a different course. We're never running on the same course. Everything is always going to feel really unique to that race. And I think that goes back to part of building community. If you're going to show up to a Run Windsor race, you're not going to run around Windsor Lake every single time.
Mm-hmm.
It's a totally different course and experience.
That's great. And following you on social media and the Instagram and all the other things, I noticed that you go to a lot of other running festivals. And are you pulling experiences out of those events to help build your own events as well, and kind of pick and choose, like, hey, I like this or I didn't like that, and we should try this at Run Windsor?
Yeah, I have done that. I did a lot of that last year. Have you guys heard of Running Man? Did you see my Running Man post at all?
I think so, yeah.
So Running
I
Man
did.
is it's like Burning Man,
Mm-hmm.
but for runners. It's put on by Jesse Itzler, and that's a
Hmm.
whole other story about how I met Jesse Itzler years ago. But I went to Running Man, and going into it, we already knew we were going to add a festival style to Weld Your Metal, which is our May race. But I don't think, just like a run coach, you don't have to have run 100 miles, but you have to at least like be able to get into the mind of a runner before you coach them on a 100-mile race, right? Same thing as a race director. I have to at least go out and experience, what are these things feel like? What do I like? What do I not like? What's exciting? What's new in the industry before I can just throw it out to the community? So I've gone to a couple of different events over the last few years that have a unique spin on things, and it has been fun to pull out of that, what are the things that I enjoyed, and then what's going to resonate with the Run Windsor community. Like I don't want to be somebody else, but what are the little tidbits of this that I can make unique here and make fun and help build confidence in people to do something outside the box. Like cold plunge, for example. I brought cold plunges and sauna to Weld Your Metal in May, and so many of our runners have never even been offered the opportunity to get into a cold plunge or cold plunge and sauna, in between running laps. So it's fun to be able to offer something different and think outside the box. I think that's what keeps things fun and exciting. And I think that's what the running community is really looking for right now, is a bigger reason why, and more than just running.
Yeah, that's actually interesting. So when did you start? And sorry if you mentioned, when did you start Run in Windsor or Run Windsor? When was
So
your
I
first
started
race?
I started Run Windsor in 2017. At the time it was a women's only running group.
Yeah,
And
and
I think the first race I directed was in December of 20, it was probably December of 2018, to be honest with you.
yeah, because it feels that running, especially long distance running, is a rapidly growing market. And I'm curious if you've seen changes in events or what the demands are by runner, as there's more and more competition, more and more race. If we talked with Candice a few weeks back, 200 miler 10 years ago was absolutely abnormal, whereas now they're popping up everywhere. So how do you differentiate your race and make sure that people will come to your race and say, wow, like Run Windsor is really great?
That's a really interesting question. So, while it's booming, I still think there are really small pockets of communities of people in different demographics that still feel a little bit intimidated by the sport. And instead of being someone that feels like I'm putting on races that are scary and have a barrier, I really strive to be someone that is going to be introducing people to ultra events and longer distances and take away the stigma and the scariness of it. I don't really ever personally strive to be someone that owns or directs something as big as the Leadville 100, for example, because let's be real, guys, we've all done it. That is a scary race. I kind of want to be someone that says, "Hey, in our backyard, let's run for 24 hours. Let's see what that feels like." And I want to be
Mhm.
someone that's empowering others to do that. And what's funny is that I have a huge handful of people that just this year have run our 12-hour last one standing race and our 24-hour Weld Your Metal event, that, not to toot our own horn, but if we wouldn't have put those on in the backyard, in Windsor, in Greeley, in Eaton, those people probably would not have taken the time, the money, the resources to travel away from family to go run an ultra. So by us and small race directors, by offering these little like intro ultras, it really just opens up the market. And that could be why it's expanding, because I would imagine there are a lot of people just like me across the United States that are saying, hey, if someone else can put on a 24-hour race or a 100-mile race or a 50-miler, why can't I? And it doesn't have to be big and grandiose, but it at least gives people the opportunity to just dip their toes in the water in a less intimidating way. There's no barriers to entry. There's no wait list yet. Someday there's gonna be a wait list. I just know it, right? But right now it's just
Are you going to
come
do a
on.
lottery?
What was that?
Are you going to do a lottery?
Yeah, we're gonna do a lottery one day. We're gonna be as big as bigs. Yeah, so I think that to answer your question, Simon, I think that the human spirit and the body is willing to do those big things, but you need someone to encourage you. You need coaches, you need mentors, you need the opportunity, and you need someone to just encourage, get out there and try something different. Find your new limit. Find the new thing that makes you want to go the next step, that makes you want to go a little bit further than the 5K, a little bit further than the marathon. So yeah, it's growing, and if you, it's definitely one of those industries where if you build it, they will come, and not in droves, not in thousands of people, but like one story I have to tell you, like we put on Weld Your Metal. We've done it a couple years in a row, and it's always been a heavier distance race, 7K, a heavy half, heavy full marathon, a heavy 50K. And this past year we added on that 24-hour format. And I think we only had 2 people break the 100-mile mark in that 24 hours. But it was pretty cool to be at the finish line of this 4-mile loop when our first runner came across, and he just showed me his watch, and he was like, "Look, I hit 100 miles." And it was like we just put on our first backyard ultra. Brandon's been running all day, and he just hit 100 miles. And so it only takes 1 or 2 people to create this domino effect, because who knows how many people Brandon has now influenced to go out and run a 100-mile race, and not just ours, but one of Candace's races. So
I know it's not necessarily a competition, but any market is a competition to some extent. How do you compete with kind of the bigger juggernaut out there? Like Aravaipa obviously has similar races. I mean, I think they have at least a race every weekend, if not 2 or 3 races every weekend, and they have a lot of visibility. Whereas, quite frankly, I had never heard of your organization. So, how do you manage to attract people?
we're really just focused on creating a unique user experience at our races. We're hyper focused on making sure we're accessible to all. We're encouraging to everyone. My team, including our MC, we really want to get to know people when they're showing up to packet pickup. We want to hear their stories. We're inviting them to community group runs and training runs leading up to the event and afterwards. And it's just being hyper focused on the day of experience. As the race director, I'm really focused on the course, and Sean, my business partner, and the relays. And then, he works for Run Windsor. Like our courses are dialed in. I don't want one person getting lost. I want to make sure everyone has a great meal at the end, that the music is good, so I think that that's really how we can stand apart. I've been to other races where you feel like no one really cares about you because the race director just really doesn't, or they've been doing it for so long, or you're one of 5,000 people. So I think for us, it's really trying to make it feel like we want to make them all feel like they have a place with us. They're part of our family. The other part of it is the giving back component of it. So our volunteers, the nonprofits that we donate back to, they're all very community focused. So we just try to spread that mission that it's more than about running. And by running one of our races, you're really helping us to impact our community. So I think that sets us apart a little bit. At the end of the day, I'm definitely in the mindset of when all waters rise, all boats rise mentality. I think I'd love to teach someone to run or get them excited about running, and now they're signing up for races all over the country because they're going to inspire others. And at the end of the day, that should be our mission. And if we're doing things for a non-selfish reason, I think it'll come back for the good of it. But I mean, you're right though, Simon, the competition is fierce. Even locally, the market is super saturated. So it's really just showing up every time and just doing the best we can to make sure people are having a great time.
Yeah, I know. I get that. I mean, I'm pressure testing, but just I think it's healthy discussion. I agree with you. Providing a good product at the end of the day is what matters, because then you're relying on a little bit of word of mouth. People will say, "Hey, I ran this random race from a small organization I didn't know about. It's just I needed something that Saturday, and it was there, and it was great." The one I have it's called Loup-Garou in Louisiana, and I don't think anyone knows that race. I'm like, "Hey, that's a really good race." So I tell people, and I know some people signed up for it because I had a good experience. I told them. So hopefully it does snowball. And you are very correct. There are some races that really don't care about runner. And you have race directors straight up saying, if you get lost, you're stupid. It's like, well, yeah, okay. I mean, you don't have to say it. Like, you could be right about that, but come on,
Yeah.
man. Like, I'm tired here. It's always
Yeah.
interesting.
So
I
that's
think
For what
funny
it's worth,
because
if you lose a runner, it's not necessarily your fault. I have once before. I was, of course, I was super well marked. There was even a little sign on the ground saying wrong direction. I was so tired, I walked over it, and then eventually I looked at my watch like, hey, I'm not on the track anymore. And I was like, oh, they should have indicated that a little bit better. And once I came back and I saw the sign, I was like, you know, that one's on me. Not much you could have done there.
Outside of them having like a big giant clown out there pointing you
Mhm.
the other direction.
Well, sometimes they have people, right? Like for big race, they have people pointing you in the direction. They could have done that, I guess, but that was not necessarily a big race, and I was all by myself. But yeah, I like the attitude. I like that you're thinking about the runner, their experience, and broader than just running, but also the community. So I think that's all very positive.
Mandy, is there a lot of other events in your area? So just to kind of paint the picture for people that aren't familiar with Windsor, I did say it's about an hour north of Denver. It's on the east side of I-25, but it's fairly rural. I mean, there's a little downtown Windsor, and it's cute. It's got the pizzeria and the typical things and a school. But these are really small towns and really small communities. They have lots of land, lots of agricultural things. They're really kind of rural communities, and so I think you're bringing something to this rural community that hasn't been there already, and so you're right. I think you're drawing on these people that probably aren't going to drive to the big city and go run the half marathon at Denver Colfax half marathon or something like that. You're kind of introducing them in their atmosphere, in their context, and in their comfort zone before they might branch out and try bigger, larger events somewhere else.
Yeah, I'd say we have a good combination of that, Brian. So we're probably 20, 30 minutes from Fort Collins, 45 minutes maybe from Boulder. So we actually do attract a lot of people from Fort Collins, Boulder, Longmont, Denver, Colorado Springs. So just to paint the picture of what our race series does today, which Simon, this might go back to your question. When I first started, I think our first 5K, we had maybe 100 people run the Santa Catch race. And even that day, I was like, this is huge. This is insane. Which relativity, right? Like that was my first time doing it. Today, all of our races, we have between 600 and 1,200 runners per race. And when you think about that's how many runners you have, you double or triple that for attendees, right? Because Brian, if you're running, your family might show up to spectate, cheer you on. So the economic impact has actually been really huge for our community. And we probably get maybe 20% or sorry, 40 to 50% of our runners come from Windsor, which our population here, Brian and I just talked about this. We were about 20,000 people when I moved here. Now we're at about 40,000 people. So our population is booming in Northern Colorado. It is a beautiful community, Windsor is, but we probably get 50% of our runners from Windsor, Timnath, Severance, and then, another 10 to 20% are going to come from Fort Collins, Greeley, Alt, and then we kind of just continue to branch out. Every race, we typically get 10 to 20% of participants coming from out of state. And that's even our small 5Ks. We will get a lot of out of state runners, whether it's someone venturing to, we do this all the time, right? I want to go try a new race. And for a new runner, it might just be a 5K or a 10K, and they'll travel from near and far to participate in our races. And those stats are probably the same for the running events that are surrounding us. And so while we have, we hold 10 races in this area, which is Severance, Windsor, and Greeley. I would say my competition, it's not really competition because I love her to death and we really don't compete a whole lot, but Green Events is a race director in Fort Collins. I think today she probably also has 13 to 15 races a year in Fort Collins from 5K to marathon distance. We've got some trail races in Fort Collins. Another company in Loveland, that same thing. Their series is probably maybe 8 to 10 races a year. So we have a really healthy running culture here. Like we all really do play well in the sandbox together. We try not to overbook and compete against each other's race weekends, which is great. But I would say, like to your point, Brian, I think I do get a lot of people that have run other big races before and run our races. And then there's also this small percentage that are new to running, and it's easy and accessible to them because it's in their backyard. But it's been cool because I've watched a lot of people start with having only run a 5K or 10K, and now they've run the Boston Marathon, or now they've run Leadville. And it's really awesome just to be a part of that journey and watch them gain confidence in the sport by starting small and local. That's all it takes.
Yeah, definitely. The growth in the sport is booming across the boards in running in general, and our future ultra runners have to start somewhere, right? The people that reach out to me for coaching, the same thing. I'm telling them we got to start somewhere. Let's just go to the local half marathon, start getting some training runs in, start building up, and then eventually we'll get to the big races. But we got to start somewhere. Mandy, I wanted to talk a little bit about the charity aspect of it, and what does that look like, and how does that work with the community, and what's the outreach? What's that all about?
So that's a great question. When we started it, I think the town donated a portion of proceeds back to the Humane Society off of one of the 5Ks. And so I just kind of rolled with that. I also never read the handbook on how to race direct 101. I'm sure it exists. Actually, I wrote one recently.
You wrote
which
one.
is kind of funny.
Yeah.
I did write one, but I didn't read one before I started race directing. Now I've written one. But I just kind of was from a runner's lens, oh, sure, that's what we should do. And the town said, we do this 5K, we donate a portion of proceeds to a nonprofit. And so I just went into it thinking that's just what you do all the time. So started by doing that, and then it just kind of became a part of our culture, is I will always try to donate 5 to 20% of the race revenue back to a local nonprofit. And before COVID, that really was sure, we'll just do that because it feels like what we should do. Coming out of 2021, I really felt empowered to be, if we're going to do this, and if I'm going to work so hard at it, and I'm going to demand so many volunteers to work hard at this, and I'm going to empower our runners to show up at every race, we have to do it for a better cause every time, or, for a cause. And so we started establishing relationships with nonprofits that I feel really impact our community in a meaningful way. Local nonprofits that really do need our help, grassroots causes that speak to the mental, emotional, and physical well-being that I try to impact through running. So we have really great longstanding relationships with local nonprofits that we donate to from every single race. So I'll give you some examples. Health for Heroes is a veteran and first responder nonprofit support system in Fort Collins. They're always the beneficiary of Weld Your Medal. Adopt a Family through Surf 68 provides families and kids with gifts and supplies they need at the holiday season right out of Fort Collins. So these recurring nonprofits for every single race on our calendar. And it's been fun to do. I don't require anything of them. I want them to be able to have a platform in which they can celebrate some fundraising. And if they want to show up and volunteer, awesome. They don't have to. So that's been cool. And then we started a nonprofit called Windsor Gives a couple of years ago, simply because we were getting a call to do race directing and running events for free, which I love. And I already feel like I really already do it for free. So I felt like if we had a nonprofit and a 501c3, we could better impact our community. So we started Windsor Gives really to be able to go into our schools and provide kids in our community with the school fun run and a race within their school without the admin, the staff, parents, teachers, gym teachers having to do all of the work. So we order the race bibs, we order the shirts, I take the arch, I MC the whole thing, I lose my voice by the end of the day, but we give them that fun experience in their school at no cost to them. And the thought being that we as a 501c3 apply for grants, get sponsors, and we just pay for it all and we make it all happen. So outside of that, we've done athletic scholarships where if someone has a financial barrier to endurance events, we will fund their entry fee. We had one athlete we actually funded to do the Leadville Silver Rush this year, who was starting up his own business. And it was a little bit of a financial, running events are expensive, especially when you get to the ultra scene. So we do scholarships, and then we do motivational speaking events as well.
That's great. I actually recall this past winter, I had totally spaced it out until you started mentioning those things, but I did. I ran like a month, and I had to keep logging it. You're gonna have to remind me of the event, but it was for mental health, and you had special guest speakers each week for a few weeks. What else did I do?
Move
I was
darkness.
Move Through Darkness. That was it, and I think it's December, maybe, or is it January?
Yeah, so we start it December 1st, And it's basically a challenge for you to run or walk a certain number of miles or hours of activity during the months where we experience seasonal affective disorder, depression, and heightened suicide rates in really anywhere, but specifically in Colorado, where we're having the darker months and it's colder. We're less likely to get outside. So I actually sit on the board with North Range Behavioral Health. It's a local behavioral health system. It's actually a really large behavioral health system out of Greeley. So we partner with them, and throughout those 2 months, you don't pay anything to enter into this, but we do provide you with motivational speakers, training tips, health tips along the way. And it's really just to empower you to get out and move, whether it's by yourself, with your kiddos, with your family, with coworkers. And throughout it, we're giving you access to, all of these great resources, and really just aimed at like impacting one life at least, keeping one person from suffering depression, from, going through that loneliness piece of it through movement. And that's been really fun. It's crazy to see people from all over the country engage in this. That's what's kind of cool about the virtual events that did come out of 2020, is that we can post something online and do live Zoom calls and get participation.
Yeah,
That's the thing Windsor Gives does.
yeah, there was a ton of out of state folks in that event. I remember last December, and I enjoyed it. I my daughter was playing volleyball, and the volleyball practice is like 45 minutes away from my house, and so I was having to run like 7 to 8 o'clock at night during volleyball practice, because I was like, what am I going to do? Every other parent sits in their car with the car idling and probably listens to podcasts or music and then plays on their phone. But I thought, I'm going to park the car and go for a run. But I was running every night in the dark. I listened to a lot of the presentations. They were great. You mentioned you sit on that board, but I kind of want to maybe sidestep a little bit. What other boards do you sit on? I think you're part of like the chamber board. Yeah, I mean you're making those eyes like there's a lot, and I know there's a lot. So maybe just give us a quick rundown of where you're at. But really, the question is, or the follow up question is, like, where does this drive come from? Like, where does this stem from? And like how have you? I mean, you're just so busy, like all the time, and I know you are. And we just talked about it a second ago. Like sometimes it's a struggle, sometimes it's a challenge, right? And you have like these moments where you got to take a deep breath and reset, and then just start charging again. And where does that all come from? But first off, like, what are you doing on all these boards?
Right. Good question. Right. So currently I am just on one board. It's the North Range board. And then obviously president of my own nonprofit, and then owner of Run Windsor Race Series, co-owner of Run Colorado Relays. That's my current resume. I was on the Windsor Chamber Board for 4 years. I was empowered to get on that board. Honestly, in 2020, I went into gym ownership and business ownership as a race director and owning a brick and mortar, super blind, no support. I had no idea what it took to actually run a business, knew nothing about these cool taxes called like sales use tax and filing and everything. So I learned all that stuff really the hard way. I went to business school. I have a marketing degree, but there's a lot they don't teach you, right? And a lot of that focused around just community support and empowerment. So when I found the Windsor Chamber, kind of nudged my way in there in 2020, joined the board really because I knew how impactful it was to me and my business as I was getting started. And I wanted to be able to help other business owners. I wanted to help other people that were just starting up, that were as confused and alone and isolated as I felt. So loved my time there, was on that board, I think, for 4 years. I also served as the interim executive director of the chamber. I started that at the same time that I bought the relays, while also trying to race direct, 9 to 10 local races a year. Not the smartest move of my lifetime. So I've learned some big lessons on overcommitment. Saying yes to everything is not always the right answer. And I do feel like I'm easing my way back into a healthier place of not balance, because I don't think balance actually exists, but self-acknowledgement and reflection on what I can give, what I have to give, versus when it's time to take a step back. So that's where I'm currently at. Where it comes from, you know, I should probably go to therapy for that. I don't take no for an answer very well. I've always been a goer. I've been a big social butterfly, a top achiever, I think, in some sense. And Brian, honestly, I would say it all just always sounded fun to me to just do all the things and what's next and what's next. My mom will tell you that since I was born, it was Mandy was always like, what's next? What's next? I think for most of my life, it was always a fun what's next. And then I think going through a period of time where I'm working so hard to build a gym, build a brand, build running, and every day you're working so hard on what can I do today? What can I do today? What can I do today? My family, my husband, my kids are pouring into this business. And then to one day have something out of your control stop you and put a literal roadblock in front of you and you can't go through it. That changed me for life. I mean, from that, like I'm wearing ironically my unstoppable shirt today, but from that moment on, it was like, oh, I will actually never let anyone else stand in my way for what I feel like is right for me or my family or my community or what I want to do. And so I do have this very stubborn, probably sometimes overly aggressive, unstoppable mentality just from that because I think I see myself as a, you know, I'm a 5'2" minority female. I weigh 105 pounds. Like, people could put roadblocks up all around me, and I'm determined to plow through them. And if I can make an impact on one person's life while I do that in a positive way, that's worth it to me. And it's probably that same mentality, honestly, that has earned me my 3 100-mile finishers. Like, I have 3 belt buckles, but probably not because I'm the most focused and dedicated to my running and my fitness. It's probably just my mental fortitude of like, actually, you tell me I can't do this, watch me. I don't know if I answered your question. So I don't know where it
That's
comes from.
yeah, that's great. I think you answered it. It's fine.
Can you relate though a little bit?
Yeah, I could actually relate to the. I could relate definitely to the tail end of that for sure. Um, I recall a time in my life. I was previously married. We didn't have any children. We had some camping gear. We were vagabonds. We lived in backpacks. So luckily, it didn't turn ugly when we did separate. But we had built a little community in our town, and when separations happen, you know, unfortunately, everyone says that we're friends with both of them and we're not going to pick sides. But in short order, I felt like everyone picked a side, and maybe most of them didn't pick mine, and that's fine. But it kind of like put some fire under me. You know what I mean? If you and like they were like, "Oh, Brian's doing triathlon. Like that's kind of ridiculous." And I mean, like I just took the crank arms off the bike pedal, you know, like off the bike, you know, like because I was just so angry, you know, and like had so much rage. And like if you tell me I can't do something, like that's just gonna infuriate me enough to do the thing really well, whatever the thing is, right? So I could definitely relate to that aspect of it. Um, um, the other aspect is obviously yours and unique, being a minority female, and I'm a minority for sure. But I wasn't raised a minority, so I kind of like got this weird play on that a little bit. I was adopted by an Italian white family, so I was never raised like in the minority, but obviously I appear to be a minority, so sometimes I do see the ramifications of that in certain settings. People will kind of just look at me and you could almost feel like you're a little bit different in some aspects. So I get that play, or I understand that concept behind that as well. So yeah, what you're doing is amazing things for your community, way well beyond, um, you know, just community, and you're building health and wellness. You're building fostering friendships and community in a respectful relationship with the town, and giving back to the nonprofits, and just trying to bring everybody up from the bottom up. And so it's just like you said with the like a rising tide help raises all boats, and that's exactly it. Like you're trying to raise that tide. You're the tide, is how I can see it, I guess, is my analogy there.
Oh, thank
Yeah, I
you.
mean, I think
We're
what you're
trying.
describing is a type A personality, right? So I yeah, I've worked in management consulting. There's plenty of type A personality. I think I'm more of a problem solver, go getter. I don't think anyone has ever said there's something you cannot do, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna prove you wrong. But uh, I will always find some ways somehow to achieve whatever goal I have in mind. That's always been true. And then I think the second part, you kind of alluded to that at some point, is at some point you need to ask yourself, okay, I can make that work, but do I want to make that work? Because I understand what it takes to actually make that work, and then prioritizing things. Obviously, we saw kids in the background, so obviously there's things that are more important than others sometimes, and then it's just about setting up boundaries as to what's the level of effort I'm willing to put into something to make it happen or not. Is it worth fighting for or not? And I see it for sure in finishing 100 mile. I think maybe in theory it's possible to run 100 mile and it goes smoothly and you're like, hey, that was fun. That was uneventful, but usually something will happen. You will have some level of wall, and then you have to decide, is that wall going to stop me, or do I find a way to climb that wall, open the door, go through the window? I mean, there's different options to solve problems. You don't necessarily need to break the wall, but you need sometimes to go around the building. And that's how I see it. Sometimes also is creative problem solving. And sometimes, I mean, you seem, I mean, you say you're aggressive. From my experience, people that say that sometimes are not necessarily the most aggressive.
Yeah.
Some people say they're not aggressive. I'm like, oh my God, like you're not making any friends right now. But you do get what you want, but on the long run, it's not sustainable. But I don't think you would be able to build a strong community if you were really that aggressive. I think you're
Yeah.
probably like driven, but you're not bullying people around you. Even just the way you described about the folks in Fort Collin, um, you said it. We play in the sand box together very well, and to me, that shows that you're driven, but you're not overly aggressive, which is a huge difference. I think
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm probably a little hard on myself on that end. I think it's probably like more aggression in my mind of like, I have to do
Mm.
this, I have to do this. And then I do try to be delicate around those around me and our volunteers and everyone that's helping us out. So thank you for that. I've had a lot of friends tell me like, hey, be a little more aware. Like you're not as harsh as you think you are. Like you're doing a cool thing. If we don't want to be here, we wouldn't be here.
You could be
But you know,
even
there
bitchier.
what was that?
You could be even bitchier. I mean, you have
Yeah,
great
I
friend if they
can get
tell
a
you
little bit
that.
here. I'm not that I'm not that bad. I try to check myself at the door. I'd be like, okay, guys, this is what we gotta do now. And they kind of joke, like when I get that high pitched voice, it's like that's me trying to tone down my low and panic mode. But like to that point, I think, just going back to running 100-mile races, we just ran Leadville. And I don't know if you're ready for this topic yet, Brian, but
Sure.
um,
It's a flowing conversation. It's great.
I for many years since starting Run Windsor in 2017, I really have been like, go, go, go. There is no give up. There is no say no. There is no turn around and go back. Like you just do what it takes to get it done with the highs and the lows while also trying to balance, raising a family and being a wife and a friend and taking some time for just who's inside here. Right. But we were running Leadville. So this would have been my third time running Leadville. I ran it last year, the year before, finished it. It was my second 100-mile race of this year. So I ran Cruel Jewel in May
Oh,
and knocked my Cruel Jewel goal out of the water. I think I wanted to finish in 45 hours and we finished in 35.
Nice.
I'm not super up on stats all the time. My numbers fleet the second they go into my head. But anyways, was super happy with my time at Cruel Jewel. Very painful, very mentally painful. And we're coming into mile 55 of Leadville this year. And I'm super dizzy, very nauseous. Did not plan for a pacer because I'm like, well, it's my second 100 this year. It's my third time doing Leadville. I don't need a pacer. It's fine. And get back up and over Hope Pass for the second time and just felt horrible and felt sort of unsafe. But more than anything was like, and Nick and I talked about this. We took a step off the side of the mountain, and my husband was also running it for the second time, and I told him like, what does a DNF look like for me? And he said, well, Mandy, you're going to have to weigh the pros and cons from a physical perspective, but also like a mental health perspective. Like he knows that my personality is I will just go. I will destroy my body. If my mind says we're going to do it, we're going to do it. But he kind of made a good point with the mental health piece. And I had to say, like, even though I know I probably could suffer through the next, gosh, what would that have been? I don't know, many
45
hours,
or
10
so, yeah.
hours, 10 hours, 12 hours. I probably could have suffered through that and felt a little dangerous and felt a little bit not safe. Probably could have done it, but was that going to be worth the mental health impact of what that toll would take on me the next day? The emotional impact. Also, our kids are there. We've got to drive back to Windsor on Sunday afternoon because they have to go to school on Monday. And so it was kind of all the factors. Like I really was able to put those all into one pot and boil it down. And what simmered out of the top of that was sometimes the pushing isn't actually worth it. Sometimes it's worth it to just say, you know what, showed up, gave it my best. And what I actually need is to go home and cuddle with my kids right now. Very smelly, so they probably actually don't want to cuddle with me, but like probably like this is just the time to say, mom tried her best and it's just time to tap out. And I'm really grateful for that moment. I'm grateful my kids got to see that because I think what they've seen of me for the past however many years has just been mom doesn't give up, mom doesn't give up. And I think it was important for them to see that not giving up, but like sometimes just showing up and giving it your best is the best you can do. And it's okay to fall a little short of a goal. Yeah, I don't know. And now I think in a business sense too, it gave me a little bit of freedom to think about saying no to things. We got offered a couple other opportunities this past week, and I was able to say, that doesn't align with my time. I actually can't do that. And I hope to send that message to people too, is that you don't just have to be a powerhouse all the time. You can take a break.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we talk business, actually, I think the most common thing you hear in the kind of startup world and that kind of people is that you need to understand failure and understand when it's happening so that you can put your effort in a new endeavor that is actually worthwhile. You shouldn't stay if it's really not going to happen, and there's a cost, an opportunity cost to push something that's just not happening. It's going to be the same for Leadville. And I think yourself better, and you said it, that's your assessment. Nobody can prove you wrong or right, but you say I could have done it, but there's a cost to that. And then you think back, well, I mean, why am I doing that? You did Cruel Jewel. I think it's more, no offense to people that have done Leadville, but I think Cruel Jewel is more badass than Leadville. So what do you have to prove to anyone? You've done Leadville already, so what do you have to prove? You can wreck your body, that's great, that's amazing bragging right, but what for? You already have the belt buckle. You don't need two, well, or three or four. It's okay. So I think
Yeah.
it shows kind of emotional maturity to understand that and understand why are you here, what's the consequence of pushing. And sometimes you need to push, but sometimes the right decision is to say, nah, no, no thank you, that's fine. So
Yeah, thank you
I
for
think
that. And
that's
that's like I never would have thought about that going into Leadville. Like give up was not even an option. So thank you for saying that. Have you done Cruel
yeah.
Jewel?
I've done the 50 mile or whatever, 58 miles. It's closer to
Yeah.
100K because
Not
you do that
50.
little kind of loop that is not needed. I was supposed to do the 100 mile actually. So that's one of the few. So I don't have a DNF, but I have that's the closest to a DNS I have, which I was signed up for the 100 mile. And then I just had injuries. I felt, I was about to race Badwater. I felt, yeah, I can't do that, but maybe I can do the 50 mile. So they switched me, and that was probably a good decision. It was a decently rough course. I don't know how this year was, if it was hot and humid or rainy, but it's not the easiest race.
Oh,
It's definitely a tough one.
it was terrible. It rained the whole time, almost
Mm.
the whole time. So, um, probably though to my benefit, honestly, if it would have been hot and humid, I probably would not have finished that race. I don't do well in the heat. So it was not cool, but it rained, which kept it, but I got insane foot pain and trench foot. I didn't know what trench foot was because we live in Colorado. We don't run in hot and humidity. But every step from mile probably 60 on just felt like I was stepping on knives. It just was so insanely painful, just every step. And so it was terrible. But I will say I felt fantastic. Like I could breathe. There's oxygen down south to find out
Yeah.
that you don't have at the top of Hope Pass, 12,000,
Yeah.
13,000 feet. So I felt fantastic. It was honestly the foot pain at the end, but the foot pain was not enough to make me DNF. I mean, it was like, I'm actually going to run faster because get me the hell
Yeah.
out of here. This is horrible. And, you know, even my pacer was like, we're making good time. I was like, yeah, we got to get out of this. Like, I want to be done by midnight.
Yeah.
I do not want to see another sunrise. So cool race though. Highly encourage you to go back and do it. I'd go back and pace and crew anytime.
But you didn't
It's a good
say
one.
you're not going to do it again.
I would do it again. I would do Cruel Jewel again for sure.
You didn't say that though. You said you'd go back and pace and help.
Well, I'll help in any capacity. Leadville, I need a break from Leadville. Leadville and I are in a little bit of a fight.
It's interesting your takeaway from Leadville, and I didn't even realize it, but I did exactly your thought process. I applied it to my work the week after Leadville, just like Simon was saying, it had alluded to. I coach athletes online. I got 30 plus athletes. They're running events all over the country. And some are running at Run Rabbit Run in Steamboat Springs. Some are running Cowboy 200 in Western Kansas. And I was gonna like get on the road and start driving to all these events and supporting all these athletes. And I love supporting the athletes, don't get me wrong. But there was a point where it's almost too much. Like I couldn't go and travel to all these events. I can't support these athletes in the capacity. And I almost, even like Cowboy, I have 4 athletes. So like, I don't know, like, then I'm like juggling, like, how do I split my time between 4 athletes? And they're all different paces and all different spots on the course. And quite honestly, leading up to Leadville, I picked up athletes from the airport. I stayed up in Leadville for like 12 days in my camper trying to help athletes acclimate. And I was back and forth between Glenwood and Leadville, where I live, about an hour and a half because my kids started school, the same thing. So I was going back and forth for a couple of days. And I showed up to the starting line actually really tired at Leadville. I mean, just exhausted. And I know, I mean, Simon's probably tired too. And you were obviously tired from your life, Mandy. And so, you know, I'm not discrediting anyone's tiredness, but I was just giving so much to it that I like right afterwards. I said, I got another event coming up in like 6 weeks, and I'm like, I just got to take a break from traveling to all these events. I got to take care of myself to be able to take care of other athletes in the capacity. You know, I think it's nice for me to be there for these athletes, but on the same note, it's above and beyond coaching, online coaching. You know, I'm picking up athletes from the airport. I'm trying to figure out their dietary restrictions. You know, like it's a bit much after a while, and it's well beyond one-to-one online coaching. And I love it. I want to be part of the athletes' experience. I want to be at the events, but right now I just need to take a break from it. Going into the next event, I need to focus on myself. I need to mow my yard. I need to like pull the weeds. I need to do all the things I haven't done yet all summer. So it's really interesting that take that you got from Leadville is I just applied it myself without even kind of realizing it, but I just need to take that break myself.
Right. And I think we forget when we're out on the course to apply that to other athletes we see. Like when we see someone DNF or throwing up or laying down, like I don't, until this race, I never really apply that lens to them of like, you don't know what they did last week. You don't know what they went through last night, 2 hours before the start line. Like we have no idea. We're out there being normal humans trying to do something that is very abnormal. You know, it's sometimes life is hard enough, just life and getting through jobs and careers. And that's what I think is so cool about the running community is it gives us opportunity to really go and test those limits. And sometimes we go way above and beyond. And sometimes like just showing up is good enough. I mean, Brian, when I saw you that day and you told me you had clients there running it, and I'm like, but you're also running? And then you've got them here. Like, I know even just them being in that scene, and I know that you love them just like I love my runners, but that is just a drain in itself, you trying to support everyone else's goals while trying to take care of yourself. So good on you for recognizing that and the boundaries. And I think, thank goodness this is the running community, and we like, these people are the kindest, they have the most grace. So I think when you reach out and you tell them like, hey, gotta take a little step back, I can't do all the things, for the most part it's a really cool group of people that are very forgiving and humble and kind.
Yeah,
And if
definitely.
not higher,
It was well received for sure. And no
yeah,
expectations. I don't think anyone really expected me to drive 8 hours to Kansas to go
yeah, but
crew
you
for
want
3 days.
to, right?
But
Like
I
we
want
want to
to,
do
yeah,
all the things.
yeah.
We
But
want
I
to do
want to
all
be
the
there. Yeah,
things.
I want to be there, and I want to drive around and be part of the scene and just immerse myself in the culture. But I do have a life. Like we all have lives. Um,
Yeah, it's easy to neglect yourself when you're giving too much to others, and be like, wow, like I really need to do the laundry, like these underwear starts to smell. I think wearing them 3 times is kind of the limit. So okay, I'm gonna do some laundry. I'm gonna stop helping people just a little bit to help myself. But yeah,
yeah,
it's easy to forget yourself, and especially I don't coach anyone, but in that context, you help them reach that start line you want them to finish. Like you, I don't know if you would feel a sense of pride for them finishing or sense of failure yourself if you see them not finishing, but I think I would associate part of their success or failure to my doing, and because of that, just like I would make an effort to finish my race, then I would feel compelled to make an effort to somehow help them, one way or the other. Does that
Yeah,
make
yeah, I
sense?
feel that. So we no, you do, and it's hard to let that go. And I think that's where it goes back to like getting into these things for the right reason. So we race direct the Wild West Relay. That's a 200-mile race from Fort Collins to Steamboat, and then another one that's Idaho Springs to Buena Vista. So they're the only two point to point relay overnight races in Colorado. And the old race director, not old, I don't want to say old age because he did just turn
previous.
76, I think, this year. The previous race director, he would sleep, but again, he was turning 76 this year, so I'm gonna give him that. But he would sleep from mile 100 to like 150 on the course. Like he slept while the runners were out there on that course. And so even previous race participants, as soon as we were out there, like Sean and I and our team were out there awake for that whole side, they were like, "Why are you guys out here? Don't you need to sleep?" I'm like, well, probably, but also this is our race and we're race directors. And if all the teams are awake and driving and trying to manage sleep in the cars, we're also going to be out here. Like, I'm not going to go to sleep for 8 hours while you're all running on the highway and on single track trails by yourself in the middle of the night. But it is that it's hard to check yourself in the middle of that, whether it's a race directing standpoint or a coaching or as a runner, to have that moment where you're like, whoa, am I doing too much? Do I need to take a break? So it's fun. We're all learning, even as adults.
Yeah, for sure. And I want to shift gears a little bit and just kind of like maybe talk about we talked about putting the brakes on and setting boundaries and all that. And so maybe it answered some of the questions. But where I want to go back to Run Windsor and like where's Run Windsor going to be in 1 year, in 5 years, in 10 years? What does that look like, or do you even have an idea, or are you just kind of going with the flow and letting it organically grow, or what does that look like?
So my goal is that we continue to just be super authentic and we feel very locally owned, operated, supported. I would love to have a race director underneath me that's managing most of the local races with my hands on touch for some of it. The relays, that is just super fun. I mean, I definitely want to be like out on that course the entire time and part of all of those planning elements and race directing that. I think for me, I really have a love for mentorship and sharing my passion and the know-how and the lessons I've learned with others. And so we touched a little bit on the USCA course that I wrote and produced that is currently being sold. So anyone that ever reaches out and says, "Hey, I want to start my own race series or I want to put on a 5K or a marathon," like that's the first place I direct them. Is I've already put together this how-to guide of how to race direct and how to create, whether it's a race series or just a once a year race. I'd really love to get into the mentorship side where I can come alongside someone that's trying to do this in their own community, whether it's in Colorado or in Florida or New York or wherever, and help them build their own business with their own unique branding, their own reason why, identity. So that's kind of my mission. That's my goal is I think in 5 years I'll be traveling to visit other places and helping people explore their community. Help them actually plan out a course. Where should we hold your marathon route? Let's design it together. Let me help you out. What's the market like? What do the runners need here? Is your community full of runners who are really experienced and who want something uber competitive and a fast course? Or is your community newer in running, and are we just introducing it and making it very family friendly and just dipping our toes in the water? So that's my goal. We'll see.
That's
Sky's
great. I
the
love
limit.
it. Yeah, that's great. That's an admirable goal.
I just need another one of me. So if you find her walking around the streets, send her my way.
But that wouldn't be enough. You'd need 2 and then 3, right? I mean, it would just domino into
There's a
more and
movie
more and
about
more.
that, and it doesn't end well, does it?
I don't know. Is
Multiplicity.
there? I don't think I've seen that one. Now I'm gonna have to go watch it.
It doesn't end well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's tricky, right? Like what you're describing in my mind is, yeah, having another you would actually be a waste for you a little bit because you would have the same skills. I think sometimes what is very helpful is understanding what you're really good at and what you're not necessarily the best at, and then you have a good complementarity. And I've seen that with really good organization that sometimes it's a team of 2 or 3 people. And it's like, wow, like they're perfect for each other, and kind of a not matching matching personality that they get along, but complementary skill set. Maybe you find someone who's great in finance and it's like, oh man, numbers are complicated. I have no clue, but you're really good at building relationship with others. So you do that. And the project that I've had, especially in consulting, that were the best was usually when you had someone who really could take on certain things. And I just don't need to think about that anymore. I know you will do it. In fact, I know you will do it better than if I did it. And of course I'll check on you and, we'll update each other, but I trust that you're going to take care of that. I'll take care of my thing. And then together we build something that in isolation or 2 times me would not have been able to do. And hopefully you find these people. I mean, it sounds like you have a good business partner already, which is already good. Right. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Sean, when he came on board, I definitely had to teach him the ways of like how to mark a course. He's a runner himself, but also like there was a little bit of a teachable like time frame in there. But now today I'm just like, you know the course better than I do. Go do your thing. That is not my thing. When it comes to permitting for our overnight relay races, thank God he's here because I have no idea how many permits we've pulled. It's a lot. So yeah, I mean, they're definitely it's finding people,
I
getting the
marked the
right
course.
people on your bus.
I marked the course with Sean. I can't remember what it was.
It was Lucky Brew
Maybe
in March.
it was some course. I hit him up with a message. He said he could run in the morning, but he had to mark a course. Actually, you didn't show up. Now that I think about it,
Because I said boundary. So I was going to meet you guys to run, and then by the time we got done with all the packet pickup stuff, I had
that's right.
5 emails to get off to volunteers, last minute to runners, RMC, and I was up till like midnight and said, I'm actually sleeping in the morning. Brian, Sean, have fun running.
That's right. Yeah, we did mark
So
a
yeah,
course though. It was fun.
Sean's
Yeah.
really great, and I think there is some magic to getting the right people on the bus, and then making sure the right people have the right tasks and awareness to rearrange the tasks when you need to.
Mandy, we talked a lot about Run Windsor. Is it runwindsor.com or org or something? Where could we find you?
So runwindsorco.com is the best place to find us. You'll see all 12 of our events on there. There's also going to be a link to Windsor Gives, which is our nonprofit. Yeah, it's all there. If you want to volunteer, run, sponsor, that's the place to go.
That's great. And you're behind the scenes, so if somebody wanted to reach out to you with questions about starting something in their own community, that'd be a great place as well. Great resource.
Yeah, absolutely. Or you can send me a direct email, Mandy, Mandy, at runwindsorco.com. And I am super happy to help anyone that's wanting to do this, I think there's a really important piece that's missing from this industry. And I think having a little bit of knowledge going into putting on a race is important. Like you kind of, just like you have to respect a 100-mile race, you have to respect what goes into a 5K. You'll hear a lot of people saying, I just want to put on a 5K next month to raise money for X, Y, and Z. And as soon as they realize what goes into that, they notice quickly they cannot put on a 5K next month to raise any sort of anything. So I'm always happy to even just have a free conversation with someone about what it takes. Is it what's really right for them? And then if it's not right for them to put on, what are the resources to outsource it to someone else?
That's great. And I will see you at the end of September at the USCA conference. Are you presenting? You're moderating? Is that what you're doing? I can't remember.
So yeah, I'm the MC moderator, and I will be speaking on a panel about building your business through run coaching and race directing.
Cool. I look forward to it.
Can't wait to see you there. Hopefully we are, in the safe part and get to go eat some cool restaurants downtown.
Mandy, thank you so much for your time. I don't want to keep you any longer. I'm sure it's I know it's bedtime at my house. It's probably getting bedtime for at least the kids in your house, as we're all busy and stay up much later than that. So thank you so much for your time. I look forward to seeing you at the end of September. Thanks again.
Thank you both. It was so much fun talking to you, and we'll try to get some rest this month. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe not Sunday, but the rest of us should.
August, we still have 3 days, so yeah, I can do that. And then September comes.
Simon, it was great to chat with you too.
Likewise.